Hello, here with a review. It's been a month or two, I think, since I last did one. But I'm here with one today, and I was going to do this last week, but unfortunately I've had quite a bad cold, so I'm better enough now to the point where I'm not, where my voice is strong enough to talk for enough time. But I'm going to do a Paul McCartney album today, surprise, surprise. And I'm going to do this one from 1989, Flowers in the Dirt. At the time, this was considered a comeback album for Paul because the 80s had been a tricky time for him. But first things first, I will show you the copies of this I own. So this is the only vinyl copy I own, which is the archive edition from 2017. From back, it's a gatefold. I'm not sure if the original was a gatefold because I haven't got an original copy. But there we go. It feels very high quality, this archive vinyl. It's very glossy. Talk about the artwork in a sec. So I've got that. I don't own the CD. This was the first archive edition where I didn't buy the CD. I do remember that I think this came out, it was either on or around my birthday, I seem to remember. And the main thing, the box set, the super duper deluxe edition or whatever, this feels, probably of all the archive editions, this in terms of feel, feels the most high quality. It's like a canvas print. It feels really nice. My number, if you care, is 8,486. Now, of all the archive editions, this one is probably the most controversial one because, if I remember correctly, there wasn't, for some of the bonus content, there wasn't a disc for it. I think they just put a download code in this, and you had to download to get like the B-sides and the remixes and stuff. Which was controversial because their MPL's argument was, well, people don't use CDs anymore, everyone listens online. Which is true and it isn't true to a degree, because people who buy these box sets probably listen to physical media because this is a physical product. If they wanted to hear it digitally, they would buy the digital deluxe thing. And it was the one and only time they did it. The subsequent ones, there's only been 3 since, Wildlife, Red Rose Speedway and Flaming Pie, they had discs again, the full collection of discs, everything was on disc. And they also, for the first time with those ones, everything was available on streaming and digital. You could buy online the full archive edition with all the bonus stuff. You didn't just have to buy the deluxe box set, which I think that was the first time they did it with this one. But yeah, I won't get all the stuff out, but because it's a 5-year-old product now, this, I'm sure if you want to see it, you'll have seen it by now. So yeah, Flowers in the Dirt. This is Paul's 1989 album. This, at the time, was considered a comeback. So Paul in the 80s, he had a bit of a rough time, to be honest. So McCartney 2, which started the 80s, alright, that was technically recorded in 1979, so I won't include that. But its follow-up, Tug of War, which was the first thing he released since John Lennon died, was considered a masterpiece. It's still to this day considered one of Paul's best solo albums. Its follow-up, Pipes of Peace, was considered a bit of a come-down. And that kind of triggered something, and I want to be careful here because I haven't reviewed any of these albums that I'm about to talk about yet. I will do them. So, like I said, Pipes of Peace was considered a bit of a come down. It had its like big single. Pipes of Peace was a #1 single. Say, the duet with Michael Jackson, that was really big. And then there was the film Give My Regards to Broad Street, which was let's not beat around the bush, it was an absolute disaster and a complete flop. And then after that, Paul decided to try and be down with the kids and make a really contemporary 80s album, which was Press to Play. But unfortunately, everybody wanted to press to stop, it would seem, with that album. So after that, then Paul did an album exclusively in the Soviet Union, whilst he worked on this for 18 months. And yeah, he really, really did work on this one, and it showed that he had put a lot more effort into this, I would argue, than some of his previous albums, the predecessors to these. However, if I was to rank Paul McCartney albums, this would, I would say for me personally, come about middle of the pile somewhere. Whilst it is better than Pipes of Peace and Broad Street and Press to Play, I don't think it's up there with Paul's very best albums. It's just better than what he had been doing the previous few albums. But it's not as good as Tug of War that came before it. It's not as good as Flaming Pie that came a few years after it. It is probably better than Off the Ground, which was the follow-up to this. But again, I haven't reviewed that album. I will do that eventually. But yeah, we'll get into the album background. I should say, if you've seen my previous videos, you'll see I normally do a proper bit of, I I like to blow my own trumpet. Quite a good album background, but unfortunately I can't do that anymore, because if you go and watch some of my older videos now, you'll notice the album backgrounds are a bit clunky, and I've had to edit bits out because I'm assuming it's MPL have got on their high horse, or maybe Capitol Records or someone, and said you can't include these copyrighted content, and okay, fair enough, so I've had to remove it. So to save me getting told off by corporate people, I'm just going to talk instead, I'm afraid, from my iPad, because I am now modern and I've got all this to say. Some of that is the track by track review. So this album, Flowers in the Dirt, this was released on the 5th of June 1989, and like I say, for a lot of people and critics, fans, the lot, this was considered a comeback at the time. It was considered a return to form for Paul. Paul spent 18 months working on this album because his intention was also to embark on a solo tour. At this point, 1989, Paul had not toured since 1979, which was the last Wings tour in December 79. He'd never embarked on a solo tour. Some of that being because of the death of John Lennon. He was reluctant to tour in the wake of that. And then I don't know why he didn't in the mid-80s. I assume it's because of the age of his kids. At that point, his kids were probably at the age where he couldn't just take them all over the world. So, but by the time this came out, Mary would have been 20, Stella would have been about 17, 18. James had only been about 12, I think, so I don't know why, I don't know what happened with James, but I don't know if he got dragged around the world, but I don't know. But yeah, this album was intended to be released to support Paul on a new tour, his first solo tour. And one of the big things I think with this album is Paul seems to now be, for the first time really since the split of the Beatles, now embracing his Beatle past, embracing his Beatle sound. It's, you know, for up until this point, he'd always been trying to avoid making Beatle-sounding records, which, to me, I don't think that's a bad thing personally, trying to avoid that Beatle sound, because he'd done it, and he'd done it brilliantly. And now we have him trying to replicate it to a degree, and he's never going to replicate it to that degree again, because, you know, by this point, it's 20 years since the Beatles split, and he's in his mid to late 40s by the time this came out. He's not going to replicate the work he did in his early 20s. So this album was recorded in a number of studios. I think it was predominantly done in Hog Hill Mill, which is Sussex. In Sussex, that's his personal studio in that mill, the old mill that he owns. He also recorded quite a bit of it in Olympic, Air and Hot Nights in London. And he also recorded some of it in LA at Mad Hatter and Soundcastle Studios. So there we go. It's also been done in LA. However, something I haven't said yet about this album, which is a big thing with it, was the collaboration. So for this album, Paul collaborated with Elvis Costello. Obviously, in the 60s, Paul had predominantly collaborated with John Lennon. Don't know why I had to think about his name. Then in the 70s, Paul predominantly worked with Linda, although Linda was kind of a constant collaboration, I would argue, throughout their entire marriage. But in terms of a musician, it was predominantly Denny Laine he collaborated with, until about the tug-of-war period, where Denny Laine was replaced with Eric Stewart, who Paul collaborated with throughout the majority of the 80s. And you know, Eric Stewart is a great musician, 10cc, but his collaborations with Paul weren't particularly great. So he was kind of replaced at this period with Elvis Costello. And Paul has said on numerous occasions that working with Elvis Costello reminded him of working with John Lennon, for a number of reasons. And the partnership between Elvis and Paul, it's never actually been one of my favourites. I don't think they really created anything truly great. Of all the songs that they wrote, only 4 have ended up on this album. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 ended up on Off the Ground, and then Elvis Costello took some of them for his albums at the time. But with this archive edition, they did release a load of acoustic demos, which I think for a lot of these songs, that the Elvis Costello collaborations is the best that they sound. The collaborations between the two of them on acoustic guitars is better than the majority of the versions that ended up on this album. But in terms of the collaboration not working, I think it was predominantly due to the fact that Elvis Costello did something that not many people can get away with, and the ones who can get away with it are the best, because they get the best work out of Paul. But Elvis Costello was not afraid to tell Paul when something was crap. These days, like, for example, an album like Egypt Station, if John Lennon or George Martin, for example, had been involved in it, they would have straight up told Paul that "Fuck You" is a crap song, and it probably would never have seen the light of day. Ryan Tedder, I think, produced that song. And he obviously hasn't got the balls to tell Paul it's a crap song. He's just thinking, oh, it's Paul McCartney, he's one of the Beatles, he's a legend, he can't do anything wrong. So he'll just sort of stroke Paul's ego. Yeah, that's great, Paul, that's brilliant. But Elvis Costello wouldn't do that. If something was crap, he would straight up tell Paul it was crap. And Paul, by all accounts, did not like this. He did not like how blunt Elvis Costello was. And I think at one point he even accused Elvis of not taking the sessions serious enough. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's apparently what happened from what I have read. So yeah, the collaboration didn't last. Only 4 songs ended up on this album, and like I say, if you've got the archive edition, you can hear the acoustic demos, which in my opinion are the best versions of these. Speaking of producers as well, I think this album's biggest downfall is the producers. I've counted, there are 9 producers on this album. 9. Yeah, anything more than 1, maybe 2 producers, in my opinion, is too much. It's a classic case of too many cooks in the kitchen. The producers on this album, we've got Paul himself, we've got Elvis Costello, Michael Frome, Neil Dorfsman, Trevor Horn, Steve Lipson, Chris Hughes, Ross Callum, and David Foster. And the issue with having too many producers on an album is it wrecks the flow. I haven't reviewed New yet, which was Paul's 2013 album. That's kind of got a similar problem with there's too many producers on it, I feel. It's because it hasn't got a consistent sound. It's like in 1 minute it sounds like something, then it sounds like another thing, and then it sounds like another thing, and then it's back to the first thing, and it's back to the third thing, and back to the second thing. And then there's another producer coming in with a fourth thing, and it's like, it's just all over the place. There are too many producers on this album. And the songs that are the best on this album are the ones I think that Paul's produced himself. You know, it's a funny album. It's like I said, it's middle of the road. I feel when this album is good, it is truly, truly great. There are, in my opinion, some genuine masterpieces on this album, some of Paul's best ever songs. But there is also some genuine crap on this album. Something that is just on par, really, with anything on Press to Play. So, yeah, I feel that does hinder it a bit, having this many producers, because some of them are bringing crap that, you know, like contemporary sounds, which I'll get onto the track by track review into all this, to be fair. But what I will say is there were 4 singles, I think, from this album. My Brave Face, this one, Figure of 8, and put it there with the 4 singles. I think Où est le Soleil was also a single over in the US instead of this one. Was it Figure of 8? I want to say it was this one. I've got a feeling this one was never released as a single in America. You poor people. But yeah, I've also said here, and I've just said this, it's a hit and miss album for me. It shows its age in some places. It does sound a bit dated in places, but in other places it still sounds fine. This album got to number 1 here in the UK, and it would be Paul's final number 1, solo number 1, until 2020's McCartney 3. I won't go into why it took so long, but in terms of getting to number 1, yeah, it probably deserves it, because it's Paul McCartney at the end of the day, and there's some great, great stuff on this album that does justify it being a number 1, but yeah. I can't remember where Press to Play got to. I think Broad Street was a number 1 album. Might be wrong there. But I don't think Press to Play got to number 1. So this is Paul returning to number 1, and I imagine that the fact he was going on tour probably did help promote this album. Bizarrely, however, this album only hit number 21 in the US, which is quite a stark difference, really. They got to number 1 here in the UK, but number 21 in the US. Don't know why. Anyway, that's all I'm going to talk about, I think, now for the background. So we will dive straight into the track-by-track review. And it opens with the lead single, My Brave Face. This is the first of 4 collaborations on this album with Elvis Costello. I should say he wrote it with Elvis Costello, but on the actual recording here, I don't think Elvis Costello's on it. Pardon me. For whatever reason, Elvis didn't come down to the sessions. Except for one song, but we'll get on to that. But this one, yeah, this is the lead single, and I used to love this song. I used to play this song a lot. Now, I don't really play it very often. It's kind of, I don't want to say it annoys us anymore, but the intro annoys me where it goes, my brave, that bit really annoys me. I wish it would just kick straight into the verse, the I've been living a lie. I just wish it would start from there. Like the demo does. I think, personally, I've wrote on here actually, the demo between Elvis and Paul, the original acoustic demo of this, in my opinion, sounds better than the recording. It's going to be a common trend you're going to hear in this review. But yeah, for the first time, however, in a while, probably since the Beatles, this song sounds very Beatlesy. It sounds like a like a lost Beatles song, which is the first that he's done it a lot since this album. But this is the first time he's done it, which is probably why he made it the lead single, because it had that Beatles sort of charm to it. And it was a relatively successful single. It peaked at number 18 here in the UK, which I know is not a top 10 single, but number 18, it's still not bad. Yeah. What else have I wrote here? It's probably the best song, this, of the collaboration that he did with Elvis Costello, which maybe says a lot about the collaboration. But yeah, in terms of the actual quality of the songs that they wrote together, this one is probably the best one of the ones that Paul took, at least. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not too familiar with the ones that Elvis Costello took off with for his album. Maybe he's took off with the best songs of the collaborations. I know Veronica, his song Veronica was one of the collaborations from this period, from between the two of them. But yeah, My Brave Face, I'm surprised Paul doesn't still bring this one out in his sets sometimes, because it is quite a famous song in his repertoire. But yeah, it's a decent enough track. It does start the album off strongly, to be fair. As much as I don't like the way the song starts, the rest of it is fine. The production of it's fine. I haven't wrote down for each track who's producing it, but I think there's 3 producers on this song, one of which is Paul. But yeah, good song. I like My Brave Face. Right, track 2, Rough Ride. Good description of the song, this rough ride. It is a rough ride getting through this song. It's nearly a 5-minute song. I think it's 4 minutes 45 off the top of my head, and it goes on far too long, this song. And in my opinion, this should have been cut down to probably about 2.5-3 minutes. It's a very late 80s production, this sort of song. I think probably at this time the biggest artist in the world will be Michael Jackson. This song sounds very much like something that would be on his album Bad. Whatever we think of Michael Jackson is irrelevant these days. But in terms of the production of this song, it sounds very... it wouldn't sound out of place, Michael Jackson singing this on Bad. But yeah, like I say, for me at least, this song, it goes on a bit. But I do really like the bit where it goes, where it sort of changes tone a bit, and it goes, I'm not asking for an easy passage, I think, is the lyric. I really like that bit. Very good bit of harmonisation. I think it's Paul and Linda doing the harmonies, or maybe just Paul and himself, I'm not sure. But yeah, Rough Ride. It's a rough ride getting through it, but it's not the worst song on the album. It's just, its biggest flaw is it's too long. It just goes on far too long, this song. It's unnecessarily long. Right, after that, track 3, You Want Her Too. This is the second of the 4 Elvis Costello collaborations on the album. And this is the only one, I think, that he actually appears on. I might be wrong there, but I know he's definitely on this one, because it's the only one where he sings on it. He sings the co-lead vocal. And the best way to describe the song, if you've never heard it, is in the style of The Girl Is Mine, which is the collaboration he did on Thriller with Michael Jackson. And I'm not going to pretend that I like The Girl Is Mine. I do think it is one of the worst things Paul has been involved in. He has since got involved in worse pieces of music, Kanye West. But yeah, at the time it was kind of a low point, I think, for Paul doing that song. It wasn't a great song. This is similar-ish, but in my opinion, this is a much better song than The Girl Is Mine. But that's not really comparing it to anything great. It's like saying Boris Johnson is a better politician than Margaret Thatcher. Sorry, I'm getting political. Maybe he is, but it's not a great comparison when you're comparing him to that. But anyway, gone completely off topic there and brought politics into it. So, in terms of You Want Her Too, I used to absolutely hate this song. However, in more recent years, it's actually kind of grown on me, and I'm going to go as far as to say I actually like this song now. I really like Elvis's voice on it. And regardless of what we think of the quality of the collaboration, the way the two of them sing together, I think is genuinely very good. Now, the original demo of this isn't too different from the finished version. If you listen to the original demo, it doesn't really sound any different. It's maybe Elvis's voice is a bit louder on it than on this finished version, but otherwise it's not too dissimilar. I really like the outro of this song as well. It kind of goes into I don't know how to describe it. Something I would imagine hearing in the war, during the Second World War in this country, like during the Blitz, just sort of people in the basements having a bit of a swing with the do, like a big band music. That's what I want, kind of wartime music. Kind of sounds like that, the outro, which I think is probably an intentional thing. Yeah, I quite like You Want Her To. I must admit, it's probably my guilty pleasure with this album, and I'm sorry I have to compare it to The Girl Is Mine, but that is the closest thing I can compare it to. It's much better than that. Right, after that, track 4 is Distractions. So I've always had a funny relationship with this song because I've never really cared for it massively. It's a pretty slow song. It's pretty much a ballad, is the best way to describe it. It sounds like an old film theme. Probably a film from like the 1930s or 1940s. This would not sound out of place on it. Probably like a murder mystery sort of thing, like a really old Agatha Christie style of film. This would not sound out of place as the theme tune on it. To be fair, as much as I don't really care massively for the song, the production on this song is really, really good. It's probably, of the 4 tracks so far, the best production out of any of them. And I've wrote here that I love the chorus, which I do. I really do like the chorus. It's the verses, I think, that are a bit, I don't want to say boring, but it's probably the best word I can use, to be fair. But yeah, the chorus, truly a good chorus. I really like the way Paul sings the chorus. Yeah, good tune. Track 5 is We Got Married. This song features Dave Gilmour on guitar, and it's the oldest song on the album. It was recorded in 1984, I think, so why on earth this didn't go on Press to Play, I don't know, but if it had gone on Press to Play, it would probably be the best song on Press to Play, or a contender for the best song on it, which says a lot, because I don't really care for this song either. I always forget about it. When I put this album on, and if I'm listening to it from start to finish, when Distractions finish, I'm expecting Put It There to come next, and then it's not. We Got Married comes on, and I'm like, oh, I forgot about this song. Apparently this song was almost a single as well, which surprises me. I imagine it's because Dave Gilmour's on guitar, but it wasn't a single, and I'm not surprised, to be honest, because I don't think it's anything spectacular personally. But it does feature a guitar solo from Dave Gilmour. Like I say, it's a pretty good guitar solo. I think Paul has said in subsequent years that it's about, it in part is inspired by him and Linda when they first got together and got married, but there are parts of it that aren't true because he's never lived the life of living in a flat and stuff like that with Linda. But yeah, We Got Married. It's okay. It's nothing special though. Right, so track 6, Put It There. This is when the album really gets its wheels back on, because in my opinion this is without doubt the best song on the album. And this is not just the best song on the album, this is one of Paul McCartney's best ever songs, in my opinion, period. I would go as far as to say, if Put It There had the Beatles name to it, Paul would still be doing this now in every concert he does. It would be a classic if this had the Beatles name to it. If I'm making the Beatles comparison, it's probably, its closest comparison is probably to something like Blackbird. It's an acoustic song. And I'm going to be very controversial here. If I had to pick between Put It There and Blackbird, without hesitation, I would pick Put It There. This is a much, much, much better song than Blackbird, in my opinion. Yeah, this is a truly, truly classic song. It's an underrated. If there was ever a song that was underrated by Paul, in my opinion, it is this. This is this album's creme de la creme. I'd probably use a Del Boy phrase there. I don't know if that's a real French phrase, but it's a very good song. Put It There. If you can't tell by my hyping up of it, it's like I say, it's kind of in the style of Blackbird, but it's a better song than Blackbird. That's a controversial thing. It's inspired by Paul's dad. When they used to have an argument, Paul's dad would then put his hand out and say, "Put it there if it weighs a ton." That's probably why I like it better than Blackbird. I feel the lyrics, to me personally, are more relatable. Yeah, I just think it's a very, very good song. It was the final single from the album as well, which it peaked at number 32 here in the UK, which for the final single from an album is not bad. Getting to number 32, it's normally just the lead single that breaks the charts these days, and then everything after that doesn't even chart. But yeah, Put It There, really good song. I can't say enough how much I love it. And never done live anymore. Never ever done live. I don't think it's been done live since the tour to support this album. And that is a real shame, because like I say, if this had the Beatles name to it, or Christ, even Wings' name to it, it would probably still be in every Paul McCartney set list. People would be begging him to do it. Yeah, maybe it's just me that feels like this about this song, but I genuinely do feel this is a truly, truly great song. And when I said at the start of this video that there are parts of it that make it a masterpiece, well, that's what I mean. This song here is what makes this album a masterpiece. Truly, truly great song, Put It There. Right, the next track is Figure of Eight. This is an interesting song because on the tour that supported this album, Paul's first solo tour, he opened with this song every night. My dad's seen Paul at Glasgow on that tour, so he'll have seen him open with this song. Very interesting song to open a tour with, to open it with a brand new song. You wouldn't do that in this day and age. It's always going to be a Beatles song these days. But, yeah. In terms of Figure of Eight, this was the third single from the album, and it peaked at number 42, which is interesting that Put It There, even though it was the last single that came out after this as a single, peaked higher than this. But I want to say the melody of this song is great. It has got the basis of a great song, but I don't know if this is a controversial statement. The vocals on this track are truly awful. I do not know what the hell Paul is doing with his voice, but he is murdering what has got the potential to be a great song. I really, really do not like the way Paul McCartney sings this song. And it's not like he couldn't sing at this point. It's not like his voice was the way it sounds today. His voice was still in perfectly fine form, but I don't know what the hell he's doing here. I don't know if he's trying a different vocal style, or I don't know if he's trying to sing it in that Monkberry Moon Delight, Oh Darling, Wildlife style of vocal, which obviously, if that is him trying to do it, he can't do it anymore by this point. Yeah, I do think this is a terrible vocal. He sings it very weird. But then when the backing vocals come in at around the 1 minute 45 mark, the way he sings them backing vocals are great. I don't know why the hell he didn't just sing it in that style, and then it'd be a perfectly fine song. But in my opinion, this is a genuinely good song that has been ruined by the vocals, the style of the vocals. Why he's singing it like that, I don't know. It's terrible vocals ruining a song that had potential. And live, I think he even sang it in that style live. You know, if you listen to Trippin' the Live Fantastic, the live album that was released from that tour, it sounds like he's really struggling with it, which isn't a great way to start your first ever solo tour, with a song that you're struggling to sing. But that's just my opinion. Anyway, after that it picks up with this one. Second single from the album, peaked at number 18, which is the same as My Brave Face. So first and second singles peaked at the exact same spot, interestingly. Second best track on the album, in my opinion. If it wasn't for Put It There, this would be the best on the album. If it had been down to me as well, if I was Paul, I'd have made this the lead single, but obviously I'm not. This is also one of my favourite Paul McCartney solo tracks. This is a genuinely very good song. It could have been a very big hit, this. If this had come out in the earlier on in the 80s, I think this would have been a top 10 single, potentially top 5. It's good enough for that, and he's been robbed of one here. Maybe if he made it the lead single, it would have been a top 10 hit for him, but he obviously wanted to pick My Brave Face because it had a Beatles sound to it, whereas this doesn't. This sounds a lot more contemporary, but it sounds good contemporary. It sounds like he's genuinely trying to be on trend, but not too on trend, if that kind of makes sense. Great vocals. He's singing this very, very well. It's got great production. I do know that it's just Paul who produced this on his own. So the two best tracks on this album were produced just by Paul. Make of that what you will. I love the way it kind of builds up in sound. It starts with just sort of vocals going this one, and then there's a guitar kick in with just Paul singing, and then it gradually builds up and up and up and up with more sound and instruments. Yeah, great song, this one. Worthy of being on any Paul McCartney greatest hits album, or best of compilations. It is a great song. Really do like this one. Now here's a little fact for you. If I am listening to Flowers in the Dirt from start to finish, after this one finishes, I switch the album off, because in my opinion there is nothing worthy after this of sticking around for. So, track 9, Don't Be Careless Love. This is the third of the 4 Elvis Costello collaborations. Oh, they're back. It starts as an a cappella song, this, so it's just Paul with vocals, and there's some oohs and ahs, I think, behind, backing him up. Paul does sing this one very well for an a cappella song. Very, very good. But it's just a bit of a boring song, to be honest. And the original demo, in my opinion, with both Elvis Costello and Paul singing it together, is a much better song than this one. A much better recording. It works well with the two of them singing it together on the demo, but Elvis Costello doesn't appear on the finished version, or at least he doesn't appear singing the lead with Paul, which is a shame because it could have been a great song if if they'd done it like that demo, just kept it as an acoustic song. But there we go. After that, we've got the final of the Elvis Costello collaborations on this album, That Day Is Done. This is also technically the title track because it contains the lyric, Flowers in the Dirt. I think the lyric is, she sprinkles flowers in the dirt. I've never said, really, I don't care that much for this album title or the artwork. I think it's kind of boring artwork. This started a period that is still going on where we have not had, since 1986's Press to Play, a clear photo of Paul on an album cover since. I know he was on the cover of Flaming Pie and Driving Rain, but they're kind of blurred photos, and there was a young picture of him on, Chaos and Creation in the Backyard. Oh, I suppose he was technically on the cover of Kisses on the Bottom, but he was kind of hidden in some flowers. But anyway, in terms of this album cover, I don't really care for it massively, to be honest. Yeah, whatever. But in terms of That Day Is Done, I don't really care for this song either. Yeah, interestingly, on the demo of this song, Elvis Costello seems to be singing the lead on the demo, and Paul is sort of singing the harmony and the backing vocals on it, which is interesting. I wonder if this song was originally intended for Elvis, but Paul took off with it instead. Anyway, it's not a great song. It's nothing spectacular, if I'm being honest. Right, after that, we've got track 11, How Many People. Yeah, this is a reggae sort of vibe, which, you know, Paul and Linda love their reggae. They have done sort of reggae sort of music in the 70s, and they've done much better than this. Goes on way too long, this song. It's like a 5-6 minute song, I think. Yeah, it just overstays its welcome, goes on far too long. I don't care for it, and it doesn't go anywhere. In the first 30 seconds, if you don't like the song, just move on from it, really, because it doesn't change, it doesn't get any faster, it doesn't get any slower. There's nothing really more get added to it. It just stays the same sort of beat and tone throughout the entire thing. Yeah. Right, track 12 is the closing track on the vinyl, which is Motor of Love. This is a very late 80s production style of song. It's kind of like this big ballad sort of big epic thing. And I know I said I switched this album off after this one, but I do actually quite like this song. Not enough to sit through the 3 tracks before it, but yeah, if I'm listening on my phone, I will, to be fair, after this one, I'll probably put this song on, because I think Motor of Love is a good song. It does go on a bit. It does go on like 6-7 minutes, which is far too long, but that's probably because there's other songs on this album that go on far too long. If this on its own was, if the other tracks were all just like 3 minutes long, and then there was this one that was about 6 minutes, that would be fine. But because there's other tracks in here that are like 5-6 minutes that are far too long, this also falls into that same trap, unfortunately. And I've also said that Paul sings this song brilliantly. This is some of his best vocals on the album, this song. Yeah, it goes to show at this point his voice it's still in fine form for the most part. There's plenty of power in it singing on this song, unlike Figure of Eight. But yeah, Motor of Love, great song, and like I say, closing track on the vinyl. However, if you were unlucky enough to buy this on CD or cassette, or in later years if you listened to this on streaming or you've downloaded it, you will unfortunately be greeted with what is the album's actual official closing track, Où est le soleil? If you bought this on vinyl at the time, or you still own this on vinyl only, we're very lucky because we don't have to listen to this song. This is a truly awful song, and it was a single in America, you poor people. But yeah, that's all I'm not even gonna waste my time talking about this song. It is a genuinely awful song. So anyway, that is it. That is Flowers in the Dirt. comeback album in the sense that, you know, My Brave Face is a great song. I suppose, to be fair, Distractions is a good song. Put It There, this one, they're 4 really, really great tracks. But, you know, there's some middle of the road. Figure of Eight would have been a good track if Paul had not sang it in a weird voice. We Got Married's alright, I suppose, just I forget about it. You Want To, I like that. Rough Ride will be fine if they'd shorten it. More of Love's decent enough. But then you've got genuine crap on here, like How Many People and That Day Is Done and Don't Be Careless Love. So yeah. Flowers in the Dirt, a comeback album, yeah, I suppose it was, compared to, it is a better album than Press to Play, but like I say, it's middle of the road, it's mid-tier, and the only reason it's getting mid-tier is because it's got tracks like Put It There and this one on this album. But if it weren't for those 2 tracks, it would probably be quite low down on my rankings of Paul McCartney albums. So yeah, in my opinion, he didn't get back onto form really until Flaming Pie. Flaming Pie was when he truly returned back to his great form. So yeah, if you want to see my review of Flaming Pie, I have reviewed Flaming Pie, and I have also reviewed Tug of War. So yeah, that is Flowers in the Dirt. Yeah, it's an alright album, I suppose. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you very soon, I hope, for another review, where hopefully my throat will be not feeling like I need to cough, which I now feel like I need to. So yes, thank you very much, and I will see you very soon. Ta-ra!